break up the momentum of our discussion, but to kind of refocus us. That was a good training. We learned a lot, and everyone was really engaged. And it was nice that it was offered a number of times, and the presenter was out of this world great. The question is, when we have concerns as council members, as it relates to harassment and improper treatment or what have you, that's focused or initiated against us, we are trying to figure out what our recourse is, so that it's done seamlessly, where there's productive results at the end, and not making issues worse than they need to be, and we can move towards resolution. That's what we're asking.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for attending the training as well. I'm glad you got something out of that. I think Beth Kennard does a great job from Summit Law. Really good trainer. As we were talking during the sessions, I wasn't able to attend them all. I did attend quite a few of them. One of the things we do talk about is these laws are designed to protect employees who work for the city of Auburn from employer. There are a number of laws on the books that require employers to provide a hostile-free work environment from discrimination and illegal harassment. They are not set up for elected officials. The laws do not cover elected officials. It is employer-employee relationship. The training isn't just for directors, it is for supervisors and managers as well as elected, because as elected officials, you could be accused of engaging in that type of behavior for our employees. So it's imperative that you understand your roles and responsibilities as well as elected officials, because if there is an allegation that could arise, we have an obligation and affirmative duty to investigate it and make sure we put an end to it to protect our employees. Now, back to Deputy Mayor's concern, what do you do for elected officials? Again, our policies don't specifically outline electeds' roles. I do not have the same power to effectuate a change in your employment. I cannot fire the mayor. The mayor can fire me. So right there is a tenuous relationship as well, and same thing with elected officials. You are elected by the people. You are not subject to termination by staff. So I cannot stop and effectuate a change in your behavior with an investigation. I can counsel and advise elected officials as to their roles, as well as when they're acting outside of their potential official capacity as an elected official, where there may not be potentially insurance coverage. As an elected official, you have $20 million with insurance as long as you're acting in the course and scope of your duties as an elected official. There's been some recent publicity, as you may know. I think it was the mayor down in San Diego a couple of years back got into some trouble over engaging in inappropriate conduct with staff. So that is something that is very serious that we have to make sure people are aware of. So there is very limited issues that we can do as staff to prevent elected officials, because I cannot terminate or discipline an elected official.
So, Dan, this is probably where you can help us. I know you're the city's attorney, and you are not our personal attorney. But from an attorney's point of view, because you've practiced all kinds of law and everything, what recourse do we have as council members if we have an issue where we feel like we're being harassed, or we have a hostile work environment, or there's inappropriate behavior? And I'm not saying it's by someone in IT, because you're safe. Or I'm not saying it's council member to council. I just generally, we want to know where we can go to get help.
And can I jump in real quick before Dan touches on that? If it's by an employee, you can let me know, because then I can investigate it and make sure we put an end to it if it's from an employee. So just to cover that perspective.
So you
our
can do an employee?
Oh, definitely. That's our
Okay.
role as HR directors, to investigate those allegations when an employee is involved in engaging in inappropriate conduct that would violate our policies and procedures. That being said, if it's an elected, then I defer to Dan.
Well, and I think Rob's comment that staff does not have control to remove any elected official, city council or mayor, and in fact, the law is, in Washington, it's relatively strict in terms of what it would take to remove somebody from office. I don't know that this is what you're asking.
No, we're not asking for that.
Well, there may not be, the best answer I can give is if you have a disagreement among two elected officials might best try to talk it out.
Okay.
Or maybe if there's a third that you want to bring in to discuss this, that's a way to address these things too. Have somebody else mediate between two elected officials, but there isn't a mechanism in the law that would, for instance, terminate an employee or a position's response.
Okay, I think that I'm just trying to paraphrase what I've heard, and I don't think anybody's talking about termination or any of that.
Well, under the law, our obligation is to investigate it and put an end to it.
Okay.
And the only way I can put an end to it from an employee, because there's still free will out there. So if someone does it, we have to make sure we're disciplining that individual accordingly. And that's where we have limitations with elected officials when it comes to the disciplinary role.
Of an employee,
I'm sorry?
an employee.
No, we can take action against an employee. We just can't take action against an elected official.
That's what I'm asking.
John, did you
Can we
want to
do
say
it?
something?
I just would like to remind everybody that as elected officials, we kind of are in a different role. We set the standards for ourselves, and if you'll notice in the packet that we reviewed today, 15.1, if memory serves right, that we'll treat each other with courtesy and respect. We've signed on to that. We have an obligation. But I also would like to remind people that at offices far higher than us, it sometimes falls short. I'm thinking of when Representative Westmoreland called President Obama uppity. I'm thinking when Representative Wilson called President Obama a liar on the House of Representatives floor during a State of the Union address. And you didn't see Westmoreland or Wilson be investigated except by the body of which he belonged to, who received some level of chastisement from that other body. But you didn't see the Department of Justice investigate Westmoreland or Wilson for derogatory comments towards the president. So a lot of times what we have as our best defense is a thick skin. I don't know if that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Councilmember Wagner.
You mentioned that you feel like, I don't know what you said you feel like, but you said Dan is not our personal attorney. Well, I see him as my personal attorney if it's related to my job. If I'm being stalked by somebody out there, I'll go to Dan and talk to him about it. So I think he is in some ways our personal attorney.
I don't at all. I feel like that his primary interest is the city, which yeah.
Well, I'm not your personal attorney, but if, even in your individual capacity, you are dealing with something that's city-related, then I do have an attorney-client relationship with you. Now, maybe that doesn't cover all the entire scope of potential bases, but I would say if you feel like you are involved in a legal issue that's related to the city, I'd ask you to come see me. I'd certainly want to have the opportunity to discuss it with you. And if, for instance, if it falls outside of that, I'll let you know. I mean, I'm not gonna leave that question up in the air, but if it's related to the city, I'd want you to take advantage of my office or me or my office.
You know, I respect what HR Rob had to say. We talked for a couple of hours and stuff, and I respect everything he said, and I do feel like he's not the appropriate person for me to have talked, but I left it on him, and whatever he did with whatever we talked about, you know, he could keep it confidential or keep it, you know, to himself, because there's no further for me to go with it. And I have to agree with Largo, sometimes I don't feel like, because you are elected, I mean, you are hired by the mayor, and there are some things that sometimes we need to talk to you about, and we don't feel like we can go to you because you're hired by the mayor.
Well,
I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Well, maybe that's my failing in making something clear. The city attorney, the office of the city attorney is the attorney for the city. But that's a broad description of things. The statutes say that the city attorney represents the mayor and the council and the boards and commissions and the departments, et cetera. Now, it only comes into play with respect to things that involve the city, but that it can include an awful lot. And I would say if you have an issue and it relates to the city and you're not coming to me, you're passing up at least an opportunity to have it addressed. I don't know what the hesitation is if it relates to the city. If it doesn't relate to the city, I can absolutely understand that. And I hope I've never said anything to make anybody think that I would not listen to any of you.
So, if I understand this correctly, if we have a problem with an employee, we go to Rob. If we have a problem with a fellow elected, then the best thing for us, probably the most prudent thing to do, would to be share it with you, Dan, just because of legal. And then we have the opportunity to pursue civil action.
Well, or other things.
Yeah, but you would be the next course, and that's what we're trying to figure out, is, you know, what is appropriate, because what we're after is resolutions, or we wouldn't be here. You know, we want to make things better, but we want to make sure that things are resolved. Yes, Councilmember Pelosi.
Dan, we could also go to MSRC.
Municipal research, you can ask them questions. They would not want to give you legal advice. In fact, they're probably, what they can give is you general answers. They'd probably say if you talk to your city attorney if it's city related. If it's not city related, they may end up saying the same thing that I might say is maybe this is not a city issue. If it's a city issue, I would want to be aware of it, as we all would. And if there's a city issue that we can address, let's look at it. If it's not city related, that's a different thing. But MRSC can give you some guidance on city questions, but they won't represent you. The attorneys that practice in
They could give us advice.
guidance.
Guidance,
Guidance,
yeah.
advice.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, thank you both. Thank you very much. And our last item before we have our executive session, we're getting to spend a lot of time with you tonight, Dan.
Am I involved in this next one?
No, the one after. You can go rest. Kevin, why don't you talk to us about downtown permit parking, and thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, council members, again, for the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development and Public Works. Right now, what is being handed out to you is just some background visuals to help in a very short briefing. I recognize it's been a long evening, so I'm going to keep this short, but in the vein of making sure the council is fully aware of our continued efforts to address downtown parking needs, we are in the process of looking to launch some additional downtown permit parking spaces on March 1st, and wanted to make the council aware of these additional spaces and what they will entail. So the first page of the graphic that you have is the actual physical location of the two spaces we're talking about. To help orient you even further, the graphic on the left is the 3-hour parking lot, literally directly outside the door if you leave on the northwest entrance to the building, if you come in and out of the northwest entrance, which is across from the parking lot. This is the Gustav Manor, is the building that you'll see immediately to the south of the red shaded area. This is an area that's currently 3-hour parking. We're proposing to add 43 permit parking spaces, and as a reminder to council, permit parking is only available to Auburn residents and Auburn businesses. If you're not an Auburn resident and you're not an Auburn business, it is not available to you. So for example, an individual comes in from another community outside of the city of Auburn, they are not able to access this parking. This is something that has been in place for a while, and it was these parking spaces are intended to be for the direct benefit of Auburn businesses and Auburn residents. So the area, again, on the visual on the left shows the 43 parking spaces. I would note that we are going to retain the first row of parking immediately adjacent to 8th Street as 3-hour parking to serve an immediate need for those that might need to access either City Hall or other nearby businesses. And again, the interest here is that in response to continued inquiries from interested parties, we are looking to meet that need by adding these additional parking spaces. The graphic on the right shows you, this is the old public health building, the old post office, also being referred to as our new Arts and Culture Center. And there is parking there that we would like to add 19 permit parking spaces, plus 2 employee parking spaces. The 2 employee parking spaces are for the employees that will be working out of that building. So again, and in the vein of how we are costing these, the parking area on the left is $70 a month, and the parking area on the right is $45 per month, and that's consistent with our parking fee program, rent parking fee program that we have in place. So what this does is that we would go from a current inventory of 81 spaces, and this is the center. Between the pictures, you'll see some text between the 2 pictures. We will go from 81 spaces to a total of 143 parking spaces. We'd have 88 spaces that are at $70. We'd have 49 spaces that are at $45, and 6 spaces that are at $30. And just to add to the kind of the background, the second graphic is a map from the updated brochure that has not been issued yet, but will be issued on March 1st, showing the various locations of the downtown permit parking area. The 2 in question obviously are permit parking area 5, that's the 43 I mentioned, and then permit parking area 2 currently has 20 spaces in the mural parking lots, often referred to, that will go up to 39 with the addition of the 19. So we are looking to meet the demands of the downtown folks that want to park in our downtowns, that want to utilize it. Again, this is only for Auburn residents and Auburn businesses. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I think this will make a lot of people happy. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Over in Savage Manor, currently underneath the building, I think it's 4 or 5 spaces that people utilize, and not a whole lot of residents there drive cars from what I remember. Are any of them using the current parking lot now?
So it is currently signed 3-hour parking, and that is from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay. So they can utilize it for no issue or no fee if under the permit parking fee program before 9 a.m. and after 6 p.m. So if residents in Gustav Manor are wanting to utilize that, they do have availability after those hours.
Councilmember Yolanda Trout
Can
Manuel.
you, that $70 space, can you have two family members, or two different family members split that?
We don't limit it in terms of, so if an individual wanted to come in and purchase multiple spaces, as long as they're willing to pay the individual price, that's fine. I would also add that we do have in our pricing program a couple of things. One, if you purchase for 6 months, you get a 10% discount. If you purchase for a year, you get a 15% discount on the total cost. I would also be remiss if I didn't add that similar to our utilities program, we do offer a opportunity for a reduction in price if you meet certain income qualifications, and that's built into this program as well.
Councilmember Pelosi, then Councilmember Wagner.
Can you go over how these fees were developed?
So, Councilmember, when we initially launched downtown parking permit program, that was several years ago, and at that time, those were low-cost programs. They were anywhere from $10 to $20 a month to purchase downtown parking space. More recently, we went back and looked at what it was costing us, because we do have a cost to operate and maintain these. The majority of these, except for one area, are owned by the city. One area we lease the space, and so we have ongoing operations and costs. And so we looked at that and determined that we were at a point where we needed to reasonably make a jump in the cost for those. We then looked at what the private sector, because as you may be aware, we've had private sector permit parking spaces introduced into the downtown area, and we looked at what they were charging, and we tried to be at or below their cost. And so right now we're actually a little bit below because they've actually raised their prices. So we wanted to be responsive to the ongoing operational costs that we have and bring that up to bear so that we could afford those operational costs a little bit better, and then also be market conscious.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wagner.
Is it possible to buy one permit and share it among vehicles?
It is in the sense that we don't have any restriction against that. So I guess the short answer is yes.
Councilmember Baggett.
Kind of along the same line, I was going to say, if a person has two cars, two vehicles that they drive alternately occasionally, would they need two permits, or could they just do like you just explained?
No, they basically, for those that may be familiar, that from Auburn City employees, you have the sticker, and so you can utilize the same approach. So you could move those between vehicles if you so chose.
So it's not like a decal?
No, we're not putting anything that's permanent in nature or semi-permanent in nature.
Thank you.
Look, I just wanted to share this information. Part of the reason why I wanted to make sure you were aware of this, we have banners that we will be installing at the two locations. We want to make sure that there's full situational awareness for those that are utilizing those, either for 3-hour parking, or in the case of the new Arts and Culture Center that currently does not have a prohibition on parking. So we don't want those individuals who are parking there to be caught off guard. So we're going to be putting banners up tomorrow. I wanted to make sure council was aware this evening so that you weren't caught off guard if anyone made any inquiries to you.
Councilmember Wagner.
I would hope that at the Arts and Cultural Center, you would not sell all the spaces so that drop-in people still have a place to park. In fact, maybe have it signed for drop-in people.
So we've actually, Daryl's gone. We've actually talked with Daryl. The majority of the folks that will be coming in, we anticipate will be later in the day. So we don't anticipate, and again, there is 3-hour parking right nearby at the mural parking lot, but the majority of programs that will ultimately go into that space will be later in the day or evening. So in talking with Daryl about this to make sure there weren't any operational conflicts, he felt comfortable. If that becomes a problem, we can obviously adjust it if necessary.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
City Attorney, do we have a need for an executive session?
Yes, we do, Your Honor. We request 10 minutes for pending litigation. Ask that we be joined by Director Coleman and Assistant City Attorney